Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're heading to a place that on the surface looks like a perfect postcard from Australia. We're talking about Lakes Entrance, a tranquil coastal community in Victoria. It's the kind of place you go to relax, to fish, to escape the noise of the city. But in 2018, this quiet town became the stage for a crime so brutal and so misguided, it's hard to wrap your head around it. This is the story of a group of people who took it upon themselves to be judge, jury, and executioner. Driven by horrific, unverified rumors, they appointed themselves vigilantes, setting out to extract a confession from a local family man named Bradley. What followed was a spiral of calculated violence, abduction, torture, and murder. But here's the part that makes this case so utterly infuriating, so profoundly tragic, and the reason it will stick with you long after this video is over. The very allegations that this group used to justify their monstrous acts, the reason they destroyed a man's life and devastated a family, were later proven to be completely and unequivocally false. This case was suggested to me by Kimberly over on Discord, so thanks so much for the case suggestion and thanks for being part of the community. If you are as fascinated with the hidden world of true crime as I am, then you've definitely found the right place to join our amazing community and get new videos each week. Please subscribe now, just hit that button. Also, hitting that like button would greatly help the channel grow and allow more people to hear these stories. And if you want to become a more active part of the community, I'd love for you to consider becoming a channel member. You will not only help sustain the channel, but you also get instant access to our private Discord server. That is where the conversation really continues. We can have in-depth discussions about the cases I cover, share theories, suggest cases, and honestly just chat about life and anything else that comes to mind. It's a fantastic community of like-minded people, and I'm in there every single day. So if that sounds like your kind of place, you can click the join button below this video. All right, let's get into this heartbreaking story, the story of Bradley Lyons. Bradley Lyons, known to his friends and family as BJ, was a 30-year-old man living in Lakes Entrance. By all accounts, he was a devoted family man. He was a father to 3 of his own children and was a loving stepfather to several more. Bradley was precious to his community and to those who loved him. He wasn't just some anonymous drifter. He was a known, loved, and valued member of his town and, most importantly, his family. I couldn't find specific information on his early life, but during the time of this case, Bradley was 30 years old and he was married to Yana Hooper, who was 39 years old. Bradley and Yana got married around 2010 and shared 8 children together, 3 of which were aged 8, 6, and 4. They were theirs together. And out of the remaining 5 kids, 4 were aged 16, 14, 13, and 10. They belonged to Yana separately from a previous relationship. And then her 16-year-old daughter also had a 4-month-old baby daughter. Their relationship was described as pretty volatile. They would fight constantly and both would partake in drugs and alcohol, which would only contribute to the drama. But despite that, they somehow managed to continue their marriage with 8 kids in tow, with Bradley accepting her 4 children as his own. Cops attended their home on multiple occasions due to many domestic fights. Bradley and Yana, they lived in a rented home owned by their landlord, 28-year-old Nick Stefani. I believe it was a separate home and then Nick lived in the back property in a small bungalow. So interestingly, and you don't hear of this often, in this small town, there was a vigilante group and Nick was part of it. This group specifically targeted pedophiles. The group was called the Australian Freedom Fighters Group, and its leader was a man named Albert Thorne. Albert had this massive, huge tattoo on his back of the group's name, and he was the one who enforced all its rules. Other key players in this group were Ricky Smith and Jordan Bottom. Now, I don't know what caused the next series of events to occur. Maybe a fight between Yana and Bradley. Maybe they wanted to end their relationship at some point, who knows? But something led Yana to set a chain in motion that could never be undone. Sometime in late 2018, Yana approached her landlord, Nick, knowing he was part of this vigilante group. She told him that she believed her husband, Bradley, was a pedophile. She went on to say that he had been molesting her 2 older daughters from a previous relationship who were 14 and 16 at that time. And she told Nick that she believed Bradley had gotten her 14-year-old daughter pregnant and that Bradley was also the father of her 16-year-old's baby. Now, why the hell would she do this? Maybe we'll have an insight into this a little later. While Bradley continued on with his day-to-day life, going to work at the supermarket, paying his bills, spending time with his kids, he didn't know that a group of people were conspiring against him. You see, after Yana spilled the beans on the new pedophile in town to Nick, Nick then shared this information with his vigilante group, who specifically targeted what? Pedophiles. The ringleader, the man who set this whole horrific series of events in motion, was Albert. At the time, he was a 57-year-old man who, in his own mind, had a distorted mission to protect the children. He was the driving force behind what would become a calculated and premeditated killing. Together with Ricky, the two of them began to plan an organized attack on Bradley without any proof, without any evidence, without talking to Bradley, or at least the two young girls. But here is a detail that is absolutely critical to understanding the deluded nature of this crime. Albert didn't even know Bradley. So let that sink in. This wasn't a personal grudge, a long simmering feud, a vendetta born from a direct conflict between the two. Albert had no personal relationship with the man. This fact transforms the crime from a personal act of violence into something far more chilling. It suggests that Albert was acting on a profoundly misguided sense of moral duty, likely fueled by nothing more than gossip, hearsay, and a collective delusion that had taken root within his self-appointed ped hunter group. This wasn't even really about justice. This was about a group of people led by a man who didn't know the victim, deciding they had the right to enact their own brutal, fatal judgment based on whispers and lies. How many other people had been their victims? Or was Bradley the unfortunate first? The crime itself unfolded with chilling, methodical precision on December 2nd, 2018. This wasn't a spontaneous burst of anger, it was a planned operation. After Bradley finished working the early shift at the local supermarket, Yana picked him up from work and walked her tired husband into their home. Bradley lay down in bed, cozying up for an afternoon nap, blissfully unaware of what was about to unfold. It began with a home invasion and assault. The group of men led by Albert, together with Nick, Jordan, and Ricky, forced their way into Bradley's home. They found him in his own bedroom, a place where he should have been safe, and violently attacked him. They beat him with their fists and a tire lever to his head. This wasn't just a fight, it was an aggravated home invasion, the terrifying start to Bradley's ordeal. From there, it escalated to kidnapping and transport. So after the brutal beating, they bound Bradley and with a shotgun in his mouth, bundled him into the boot of Albert's car. They then drove him away from his house to Albert's rural property in Nerimalang. This shows premeditation. They had a location already in mind, a place where they could continue their actions away from prying eyes. What happened next is just sickening to even talk about, but what makes it worse is that they don't even know for sure if Bradley was a bad guy. They just went on the word of Yana. This was the torture and interrogation phase. According to court documents, Bradley was left in the car for hours while his attackers went inside and plotted their next move. Jordan's girlfriend, Jessica McFarlane, lived with Jordan on the same property, so Albert was technically their landlord. So when the men arrived back at the property after kidnapping Bradley, Albert told Jessica the cat was in the bag. She knew what this meant, so she clearly knew of their plan. So Jessica goes over to Albert's car and taps the boot. And when she does this, she hears Bradley yell, "Get me out of here or kill me now." Jessica also later confessed that Albert bragged about how Bradley was left in the boot of the car for over 20 hours until the next day in the hot sun. They then brought him into a shed on the property and tied him to, of all things, a massage table. There he was then assaulted and tortured for an extended period of time. Boiling water was poured on his body and he was beaten over and over again, and a chainsaw was even held over his head until he peed himself. And what was the goal of this horrific, prolonged agony? It was to force him to confess to the allegations of child abuse, which ultimately ended up being completely false. When their torture failed to produce the confession they wanted, because there was nothing to confess to, they moved on to the final fatal stage, murder. Bradley refused to confess to the crimes they believed he committed, so they bound Bradley, put him in the back of the car boot, and drove him to a remote area of bushland known as Double Bridges. Albert made Ricky and Jordan dig a shallow grave, and it was here at this secluded spot that Albert shot Bradley at the back of the knee and then directly into the back of his head at close range with the shotgun. Bradley was either in or beside that grave when he was executed. And finally, it ended with concealment. To hide their crime, they buried his body in the shallow grave and covered it with branches and leaves, trying to erase every trace of what they had done and every trace of Bradley himself. After this, they did what one would normally do. Albert threw a party at his place with all the men involved to celebrate the murder. Oh, by the way, Yana had FOMO, so she was there too. This sequence of events, from the beating to the kidnapping to the prepared torture table, the pre-dug grave, it paints a picture of calculated cruelty, guys. This wasn't justice. This was a descent into sadistic control and premeditated murder, all fueled by a lie. The acts of binding and burying him were more than just concealment. They were a profound dehumanization. In their minds, Bradley was no longer a person, a father of 8, a member of their community. He was just an object to be punished, disposed of, and forgotten, part of their vigilante promise that they had made. For 9 days, the world did not know what happened to Bradley. But after a week of his family being unable to contact him, they grew more and more worried. His brother Zachary in particular found it incredibly strange and unlike Bradley for him to not contact him or see him for over a week. So finally, on Tuesday, December 11th, 2018, Zachary officially reported him missing to the police. This report triggered a massive police response. Police arrived at Yana and Bradley's home, and then Yana answered the door. So they asked her, where's Bradley? And she gave a really strange response. She said she last saw Bradley back on December 2nd, and he was gone by the morning of the 3rd. She said he left his wallet and his phone at home, which was obviously a red flag. But then she said that Bradley told her the night prior, so I'm guessing December 2nd, that if he were to die, she would get $380,000. She then told the police that she confronted Bradley over assaulting her daughters, and he became irate, but he was known to leave the home for days and then come back home completely safe. This was all very odd to the police, as you can imagine, so they asked to search the home, and Yana let them. They found the home filthy, but the master bedroom was spotless. An intensive investigation was launched, led by the state's missing persons squad detectives, with crucial support from the local Bairnsdale Crime Investigation Unit. The search for Bradley was on. For months, there was nothing, no information, no leads, and the family waited in agony. Yana also changed her story a few times, saying first, he left his family. Next, she was saying that he went on a trip. But surprisingly, she wasn't a suspect at first. CCTV footage from the neighbor's house eventually linked Yana, Nick, and Albert to Bradley's disappearance. Then on March 14th, 2019, the search came to a tragic end. Bradley's remains were discovered at that remote location near Bruthen, a place called Fairy Deli, and it was actually Jordan who led police to his body because he felt it was the right thing to do. Maybe the guilt got the better of him. The passage of time presented huge challenges for forensic investigators. By the time his body was found, it was so badly decomposed that an autopsy couldn't even determine the full extent of his injuries, but bones from his hands, feet, and neck were missing. However, forensics is a very powerful tool these days, so the examination was still able to reveal the critical, undeniable facts about his death. He had suffered a broken jaw, broken cheekbone, and most importantly, the shotgun wound to the head inflicted at close range. This was the hard evidence that proved that he was brutally murdered. But being in that car for hours in the hot sun, being beaten to no end, scalded with hot water, definitely would have left other wounds and injuries that decomposition may have hidden. With the discovery of the body, the investigation accelerated and the police net began to close. The arrest came pretty quickly. Shortly after the remains were found in March 2019, the 3 men, Nick, 20-year-old Ricky, and 22-year-old Jordan, were arrested and charged with murder. 57-year-old Albert, the ringleader, was also arrested and charged. But the conspiracy was much bigger than these people. In early April, the investigation widened and more people from Lake's entrance, being Alec Harvey and Jaden Ball, were arrested. They were charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and aggravated home invasion. Yana was later arrested and charged with intentionally causing injury, kidnapping, and false imprisonment. And through this intensive investigation, the motive became horrifically clear. The perpetrators acted because of their misguided belief that Bradley had harmed children, his children. Their goal was to extract a confession. And this is the absolute core of the tragedy, the part that makes this case so infuriating. The investigation and later the court proceedings confirmed that these allegations were proven completely false. Prosecutor Ray Gibson highlighted this sick, tragic irony in court, stating that Albert committed this calculated and premeditated killing on the basis of wanting to protect children while actually causing the actual opposite. By murdering a father based on lies, he orphaned 8 children. The involvement of 6 individuals points to a dangerous group dynamic, a toxic echo chamber where this collective delusion took over them and overrode any sense of individual morality or basic human decency or common sense. The legal process began, tasked with untangling this web of conspiracy and holding the guilty people accountable. While we don't have the exact trial start date, I believe the arrest took place in 2019. That culminated in a jury trial that would finally deliver a verdict. So let's break down the key players and what happened to them. So Albert Thorne, he was, the ringleader. He faced a raft of charges, including murder. So the outcome for him was he was found guilty of kidnapping, false imprisonment, intentionally injuring someone, and murder. His sentence was life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 32 years. Jordan Bottom, he cooperated with police and led them to Bradley's body. So he was charged with false imprisonment and assault, and the jury ended up acquitting him of murder. So he was sentenced to 9 years in prison with a non-parole period of 6 years. Ricky Smith faced similar charges, and he was also acquitted of murder, but convicted of assault, false imprisonment, and intentionally causing injury. He was sentenced to 10.5 years with a non-parole period of 7 years. Alec Harvey was convicted of 1 charge of false imprisonment, 1 charge of intentionally causing injury, and 1 charge of assisting an offender, and he was sentenced to 8 years and 6 months in prison with a non-parole period of 5 years and 6 months. Jaden Ball was convicted on 1 charge of intentionally causing injury and sentenced to 2 years imprisonment with a non-parole period of 15 months. Nick Stefani was convicted on 1 charge of intentionally causing injury, 1 charge of kidnapping, 1 charge of false imprisonment, and 1 charge of assault, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison with a non-parole period of 8 years. Finally, Yana Hooper took a plea deal to escape a murder charge. So she was convicted on 1 charge of intentionally causing injury, 1 charge of kidnapping, and 1 charge of false imprisonment, and sentenced to 7 years and 6 months with a non-parole period of 4 years and 6 months. The prosecution, led by Ray Gibson, laid out the facts in stark terms. They argued that Albert's actions were a calculated and premeditated killing. They hammered home the devastated irony of Albert's supposed motive, pointing out that in his quest to protect children, he, destroyed a family and traumatized Bradley's own kids. He explicitly condemned the group's actions, calling them the very evil of vigilantism. This was the state sending a clear, powerful message: there is no room for mob justice in our society. For Albert, there wasn't much of a defense to be made, but for Jordan and Ricky, their partial acquittals suggest that their defense was successful in one key area, separating their involvement in the initial assault and kidnapping from the final act of murder. They likely argue that while they participated in the earlier events, they were not responsible or perhaps not even present for the actual killing. And it's interesting to note that the prosecutors had rejected an offer from Jordan to plead guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter, showing their determination to pursue a murder charge, which I think, Bradley's family would have been happy about. In his sentencing, Justice Andrew Tinney did not hold back. He sentenced Albert to life in prison, making him eligible for parole only after serving 32 years, meaning Albert would be nearly 90 years old if he ever gets the chance for release. Justice Tinney also condemned Albert's complete lack of remorse, describing his demeanor as displaying truly chilling callousness and a disregard for the sanctity of human life. It was a powerful statement, reinforcing that those who dodge the law and commit such heinous acts will face the most severe consequences that the justice system that they're trying to evade can deliver. As for Alec and Jaden, it's confusing because I'm like, what were their actual roles? But I believe that they may have assisted in kidnapping Bradley or maybe were present during the assaults. But when I was reading court documents about these individuals, they seem to all have troubled lives, past drug use, sexual abuse when they were young. So the judges did sort of give them lower sentences, given they were, I believe, not involved in the actual murder, to maybe give them a chance at reform since they were also young. I couldn't find what evidence proved that the accusations made by Yana against Bradley were false, but I did read statements given by Nick that he was alleging that Yana's daughters, the 14 and 16-year-olds, did confide in him that they were being sexually assaulted by Bradley, but I don't know, where the proof in that is, and why Yana lied about this is unclear, but it could be due to her severe abuse of drugs. So what can we take away from this awful case? The most obvious lesson is about the devastating danger of vigilantism. The prevention here was so simple, and yet it was completely ignored: a strict adherence to the law. The fact that the allegations against Bradley were proven false just screams to the importance of due process, of police investigation, of letting the legal system do its job. It's a terrifying reminder of what can happen when people decide to act on rumors and unverified information, especially in an age where misinformation can spread like wildfire. This case is a grim, real-world example of what sociologists call a moral panic. A group fueled by fear and a sense of righteousness decided the system was broken and that they had to act. They claimed they were doing it to protect the children, but as we know, they caused the opposite, murdering a father and inflicting unimaginable pain on his own children. It's the ultimate self-defeating paradox of vigilantism. It doesn't create order, guys. It creates more victims, more trauma, more chaos. It's not like what you see in the movies. And the impact on Bradley's family is just gut-wrenching. His own children lost their dad because of a complete lie by their mother. His stepdaughter said something in a victim impact statement that has really stuck with me. She said that she and her siblings had been humiliated by a crime that they did not even commit. Think about that. Beyond the grief of losing their father, the family had to endure the stigma, the social shame that came with these false allegations. Even after the truth came out, that shadow can linger. Bradley's name is always going to be associated with this. It's a second layer of victimization, and it's just so incredibly cruel. Ultimately, the story is a chilling tragedy. A man's life was stolen, a family was broken, and a community was stained by an act of horrific violence, all built on a foundation of lies. It's a potent reminder that the most dangerous monsters are often not strangers hiding in the shadows, but people who convince themselves that their misguided hate is actually a form of justice. Your own mind can lead you down such a bad path if you truly believe in what you're doing. Isn't it crazy? So what do you guys think of this case? Thanks again to Kimberly for this suggestion. Couldn't believe that something like this happened in an area as nice as Lake's entrance. It's such a shocking crime, especially because it was based on allegations that were never confirmed or fact-checked. Pedophiles suck. I can understand the rage, but to attack and kill an innocent man on no basis or proof is just wild. This case is pretty heavy. The sheer stupidity and cruelty of it, all based on nothing. It's a really tough one to process. What do you guys think? Does the sentence for Albert Thorne feel like justice? What about the others who were involved but acquitted of murder? What do you think is going to come of this in the future? Do you feel like these, because they were in their early 20s, what do you think? Do you think that they're going to be reformed when they come out of prison soon? Or do you think that they will continue on with this act of, their vigilante group? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Be safe, and I will see you in the next one and in the comments. Besitos. Bye.